I can only describe it by making a noise. I felt this like ju-ju, 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 like coming through my chest into the rest of my body. And so that energy that I was feeling in my body was going into my deck. I'm Autumn Brown, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements living in rural Minnesota.
And I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, author of Emergent Strategy, co-editor of Octavia's Brood, writer, facilitator of Black liberation work, auntie extraordinaire, doula, and pleasure activist living in Detroit.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World,
our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity.
In today's episode, we are going to talk to you all and to each other about a shared spiritual practice that we have of reading tarot.
Start over. Remember your innocence.
The strength this card suggests is a much deeper force that's found within.
Trust your path. Take a plunge. Leap before you look.
They are a master of focus, compassion, and self-control. Now you might ask, what could this possibly have to do with learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity? But our shared practice of reading the tarot has actually been a source of enormous groundedness in both Adrienne and my life. And because the tarot is a very old practice, a very deep practice, because there's so many ways to engage with the tarot, so many ways to pull lessons from the tarot, we feel like it is actually a particularly pertinent and important practice for how we interact with our projections. How do we interact with all of the ways that we project our experiences or our beliefs about the world onto other people, onto ourselves? The tarot can be a really useful way of seeking wisdom as opposed to moving with assumption.
As always, we want to bring an Octavia quote in as something that's going to ground us, or that we feel grounds us in this. So today, the quote that we have is, again, from Octavia Butler's Earthseed, which is in the Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents.
Earthseed.
Which I am so excited because I just got the new edition of both of those books with the Paul Lewin art on it and Toshi Reagan's intro for my collection, which just... they're the most beautiful versions that I've ever seen. Like, I just feel like Octavia's sitting somewhere being like, yes, that is the cover.
That was the way I wanted it to be.
Exactly. So I don't know why Octavia's talking like that now, but
more like, that was the way I wanted it to be.
She's like, literally, that's not how I was
like,
talking.
I have the deepest possible voice.
She's like, not that way, Adrienne. Once again, not that way. So I just feel like Octavia's sitting in heaven all the time, shaking her head at me like, I'm not in heaven. Just stop. All right. So anyway, so here's what she said. Belief initiates and guides action, or it does nothing. And I love this quote because I really do think, for me, one of the reasons that I have moved towards or away from different spiritual beliefs and practices has been if I see people using it in a way that moves them into action and actually shifts and changes and impacts how they show up in their daily lives, the way they interact with other humans, how much care they take of the planet or not. I'm like, how is this actually impacting what you do and how you show up in the world? And if it doesn't, I don't really want to hear about it. Or I'm not really, it's just like, right. I don't really understand. I'm like, I don't know what it's doing for you. Mm-hmm. If it's doing something for you, great. But if I can't feel it, if I can't feel into it, then it's not as interesting to me.
Or if the thing that it's doing for you is also like if fundamentally in contradiction with like the stated nature of the beliefs.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is one of the things that I know both of us have struggled with a lot around, being raised in the Christian church. And for me, my my educational background is that I did a lot of deep theological study with a focus on the Hebrew Bible and
You're
the
totally
early.
a theologian.
I am a
I always
theologian,
forget that.
and the early Christian church and the early Christian monastics, and so for me there was like a as a part of my theological journey, there was certainly a deepening of my spiritual practice, but with the deepening of my spiritual practice also came like a sort of necessary breaking away from the systems and institutions that now represent the Christian faith, because they in no way represent the way the Christian faith like originated, or what the purpose of it was, or how anarchic and how anti-state it was, and how fundamentally it was like anti-materialistic and very, very radical. And so because of all those things, it's sort of like, you know, I mean, there's so much to say about the way the Christian church has evolved its presentation of Christianity over, you know, thousands of years, literally. But one of the things that we see in the way it's presented in the United States right now is this, you know, people in the U.S. are really bought into this sort of like prosperity gospel aspect of the Christian faith, of like, you know, our material wealth is a representation of our blessing. And that is so counter to literally everything that
the
like
rich man can't
Jesus
go
was
through
talking
the eye
about.
of the needle,
Yeah.
right? Well, and it's not only, you know, I feel like it's true for Christianity, and I feel like it's true in almost every space where people have organized around religion. It feels like, oh, and then our human stuff slips into that organization, and then all of a sudden we find like whatever the original tenets of the religion are get distorted through that lens.
Yeah.
Right. And so I look and I'm just like, oh, I see so many of these spaces are saying, oh, it's all about peace. It's all about being meek. It's all about doing unto others. It's all about these things. But then in practice, it becomes still about hierarchy, about prosperity, about power dynamics inside of whatever the conditions are of, oh, you've been here the longest, or you're praying the hardest, or you're showing up to every single thing, or you're like leading the choir, or whatever it
becomes
is.
like about making an other.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I have always appreciated about tarot, and we'll get in a little bit more to like defining even like what are we talking about when we say tarot in a minute. But one of the things that I've always appreciated about tarot is that the way in which a tarot deck exists as a place for you to cast your projections into and see what comes back is very obvious. So it's not like it's not like a lot of systematized religious traditions in that there is an enormous amount of projection and ideology happening without any awareness of it. It's like tarot in a way exists to make your projections and your ideology and your assumptions manifest so that you have to kind of reckon with them. And that's one of the things I love about working with a deck.
I love that you said that, because I was just sitting somewhere this morning. I was sitting somewhere and I was just thinking about this, how like...
Where were you sitting? Somewhere in the house?
Probably on the toilet. Because we're around... Like,
I love how honest you are.
Well, I mean, it's just the truth of the matter.
On
is
the
like,
toilet is reality.
I know, well, the truth is like it's family holiday time. And
where am I going to be in
every place I go, like in my bedroom, it's like the kids are in there like, can we play Nintendo? And like every other place is like, you know, just loving family waiting to be loving together.
Right.
And then occasionally my deeper introversion thing pops out and I'm just like, I need alone time. So I will go in the bathroom sometimes and just have the toilet seat down. It's not like I'm getting busy, but I'll just sit there and just have a moment.
I wouldn't judge you if you were.
I mean, who doesn't do some of their best thinking on the actual toilet
Like,
while getting busy?
Love.
That might need to be a whole other episode.
Oh my God, creativity and fecundity. Yes. Yes.
I love you so much. Okay, pause. So, but the thing I was thinking on that toilet was, I love you so much, dude. All right. The thing I was thinking on that toilet was that the common thread between all the spiritual practices in my life now are that they are accessible to anyone. Right? When I look at somatics, when I look at tarot, when I look at spells and witchcraft, when I look at all the things, I'm like, this is something that everyone can have access to, everyone can get in practice of. And yes, there is rigor needed to develop, you know, skill and to actually open that portal and to actually know how to close that portal and to actually be in right relationship with your magic or be in right relationship with spirit and God.
Make it a practice.
But it's got to be a practice that anyone can do for me to really want to take it on. And so tarot, right? Tarot comes in that. And I think the first thing, and maybe we can just, I'd love to ask you this, and I'd love to think about this myself, is what was your introduction to tarot? Like, how did you first come across tarot? Were you immediately interested, or were you kind of skeptical, or like, just what? How did you get started?
Well, so what's really interesting for me is I think I'm realizing, I think I never had a tarot reading before the first tarot deck that I had.
What?
You know, I never received a tarot reading from anyone. But what happened was, a couple of things happened. There was a long stretch of time in which my partner, Genjo, really basically kept saying to me, like, you are a witch. Just, like, be a witch.
Stop hiding your witchness.
Like, stop hiding the fact that you're a witch. Like, just let yourself be a witch. And I'd be like, no, you're the witch. And I had folks in my life who I knew were doing tarot practices. And actually, through the work, when I was organizing the Healing Justice track and Healing Justice practice space at the Allied Media Conference between, like, 2011 and 2013, we often had healing practitioners who were doing tarot practices as like their offering in the healing practice space. So I had folks like Leela Lakshmi actually who were like, you know, they were doing tarot in spaces. So I think part of my main introduction to it was just knowing that like other femmes who I really deeply respected and loved were starting to do it.
Yep.
And then Sam Genjo gave me a tarot deck, and that happened probably, I think it happened in like 2012 maybe. Okay. Maybe 2011. It was a while ago. And the first deck he gave me was the Wildwood Tarot. Yes. Which is like a very much like a Celtic tarot deck. Or coming out of like a Celtic representation. And also very much like a climate change deck. So the folks who created that deck were really thinking about how does this tarot deck assist people in getting in right relationship with the earth.
Oh, I love that.
It's a very powerful deck in that way.
Yeah.
Some people feel like it's really problematic because, you know, it being a very Celtic deck, it also, you know, most of the physical representations of people are white people in the deck. Not universally, Celtics. But, you know, that's, you know, Celtics, they white.
They're like, so, we're just covering our folks, you cover your folks.
You know, exactly. So, you know, and it, you know, and for that reason, that was part of why I started to kind of move away from that deck as well. But I used it intensively for years. And I love that deck. And it's funny because one of the few representations of a person of color in that deck is the Green Woman. And that is a card that I pulled repeatedly for years. Like I would pull the Green Woman card for years and years. So and actually that pattern of having specific cards that you will pull over and over and then having other cards that you will never pull from a deck for yourself is part of what moved me in relationship to tarot, especially in terms of this Earthseed quote of like, what is the role of belief in all of this? That the way that I became someone who really believed in the power of tarot was by experiencing directly that like the pattern is there and it's very obvious if you are a regular user. Yep. It is. Yeah, it's very, very clear. And then the wisdom that comes from the pattern is also, it comes through so clearly in a really poignant way that is hard to ignore. Yep. So once I started using tarot, it was like, it became really clear to me what was being spoken to me about my patterns and my needs and what changes I need to make. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm accessing this wisdom myself. How could I ignore this at this point? It's not like I'm like have a teacher who's telling me something and I can be like, well, they fucked up in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, no, this is just me in the deck.
By myself.
So that was my journey. What was how did you end up in Tarotland?
You know, I did get a few readings, and I'm trying to remember now the order of things. If I got the readings before, I think I got at least 2 readings before I ever got a deck. And I think I was like, yeah, this is cool. You know, I get it, but I couldn't imagine like doing
Your
it
reaction
myself.
to like so many things.
Basically everything.
Cool.
I was like, this is pretty cool. It's cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty full of wonder. So, but I got some readings, and I think I was more in the tendency of astrological readings, but then I kept coming across people who were also doing tarot and being like, interesting. And then I did a community of practice year-long for the Engage Network, where I was helping guide a group to think about decentralization and networking. And one of the folks in that group, at the end of it, was like, hey, I want to continue to be in practice with you. And I think we could do it by studying Osho. And I was like, Osho, okay. Yeah. So we agreed that we would both buy the Osho Zen Tarot deck, because it felt like, oh, this will be an easy way. We can just like pull cards each day and kind of learn the Zen approach, you know, sort of the Osho Zen approach through that.
That deck is gorgeous.
Right? It's a stunning deck. So that was the year I went on my sabbatical. So I got it like right before I went on my sabbatical. So that was the deck that went with me. And I traveled 6 different countries over the course of 6 months and spent between 2 weeks to a month in each of these different locations, and was in what felt like a very deep unwinding from how I had thought of myself and what I thought my offering was to give to the world, and really like trying to step back away from all that and say what it actually brings me joy and is actually of use to movement, right? Like not just elevates me. You know, I'm like, oh, now I'm the boss of things, or now I'm the this of things, right? I was like, okay, now that I've tasted all those things, I'm like, that's not satisfying, and I don't think that's the most useful thing I could do here. And so I felt like that tarot deck was such a grounding force, because it was tied in with Zen. It was very much about like, let go of all this attachment that's just causing you to suffer. Right. Let go of all this sense of self that's not real. All the, you know, like you're creating this suffering, you're creating this, like so much of it was just like, you know, get more curious about what's going on and get more rooted in your interconnectedness to the entire world without attachment. And I was like, woof, this is everything. I love it. So I was using that deck, and then I got back-to-back 2 really amazing reads in my life. One from Shira Hassan, who was doing readings out of her place in Chicago.
Love her.
Shira is everything. She's another person who I know will be on the show in the future.
You have to have her on the show.
And then Leela Lakshmi Pyapsna Samaris Sinha did an amazing read for me.
Love her.
And her read for me, a lot of it was around this concept of specialness and letting go of specialness. And, you know, sort of being able, like, how can I be in specialness, but how can I move towards also the specialness of all, or like not needing that specialness, or, you know, there's so much that was like, oh, this is like very particular and clear in a way that was like, ooh. And she was using this deck called the Collective Tarot deck.
Oh, yeah.
So I got obsessed with that deck because it was like, oh, this is a collective of people who made this, who are radical. You know, it's like based in Northwest. So I went looking for that deck, and I found a Facebook page for them, and it was like hella, you know, like conflict happening there. So I reached out and I was like, hey, if I can support y'all to resolve this conflict so you can make more decks in exchange for a deck, can we do that? And they ended up sending me a deck, and I did do conflict support for them. And in the end, it was like, oh, at the end of this conflict, we actually don't need to continue doing this. The best move actually is to step back and let the project go. And so, but then I had the Collective Tarot deck that I got to use and continue to use. And it's a very precious and very sacred deck to me. And
so unique.
It's so unique. And so, you know, it really is. I'm like, oh, and I think it's opened up the door for a lot of other decks that are now being like, oh, it's okay to be overtly radical in the tarot space. And, you know, I had not seen it that clearly. But you know, I think the one that Shira was using was the Mama Peace deck. I think that's the name of it.
Oh, yeah. Mother Peace.
And that one,
my bestie uses that too.
I love that deck. It's the circles, and it's like a ton of people of color, a ton of femmes. And then I've continued to now start to accumulate decks. And so I think I have a total of 8 or 9 decks now that are like between my house and what I travel with 3. But I still feel like a lightweight. Now I think of one of my people who's like in the tarot mentor zone is Alta Star, who's one of my Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity comrades. She has, I think, 78 decks.
Oh, my God.
Yes. And she is another person I really want to have on the show sometime just to talk about all this, because she does these tarot reads for people where it's like, here's a read for your whole life. Like, here's the main card that is the setting for your whole life, and here's some of the other cards that are going to play out throughout your entire life.
Wow.
And then here's some stuff that's going to happen like on a yearly basis and all that. Just these gorgeous reads that are very accurate.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. She kind of gave me permission. I'm like, you can't have too many decks. Like, as long as you're using
you
them.
don't
and
even
love
know
them.
what kind of deck you might need.
Exactly. And I'm working on a deck now, which is the final piece of it, which is working with Alta and another person named Chelsea and with the artist Krista Franklin. And we're like very much at the beginning of this process, but we're making an Octavia inspired deck. Yes.
That needs to be in the world.
Doesn't it need to be in the world? That's what we think. But it's just like finding the time. So 2018 is going to be the year of really landing that deck and figuring out how to get it out into the world.
Yeah.
So that's my journey with the
I
tarot.
love that. And I love that you have so many decks that you work with. And I think that that's so wise because truly it's like, I think there's such an intimacy that you form with a deck. Yeah. Which is such a funny thing to say. But
it's true.
It's so true. And there's a way that different decks serve different needs at different times. And that's something that you kind of only can get through practice and that you need access to multiple decks to even know that. So like you gave me the Osho Zen deck at some point a few years ago. And then I had those two. And then somewhere along the way, I got gifted the Carolyn Miss archetype deck, which is one of my favorite decks. Yeah. It's not a traditional tarot deck. It's literally what it sounds like. It's a deck of archetypes.
Yep.
So, like Orphan and Virgin and Father and...
Do they have horror in there?
Huh?
Do they have horror in there?
Horror, they have femme fatale, they have everything. And there's blank cards that you can use to make other archetypes if you want.
Ethical slut, actually.
Ethical slut. Great. I need both a light side and a shadow side.
Exactly.
And then, for every archetype, there's a light side and a shadow side. And then almost a year ago, Genjo gifted me the deck that I'm currently using, which is the Wild Unknown Tarot.
Yes.
And he gifted it to me, but then I didn't actually start using it until the eclipse of this past year. So it was like brand new when I brought it with me to the eclipse and
I love that.
Isn't that amazing? And charged it up.
You better charge it up.
I better charge it up.
Charge it.
But and actually one of the interesting things.
Actually, can you slow that down? What do you mean when you say I charged it up?
Oh, I charged it up. Literally, I had it. So I had this incredible eclipse experience.
Yeah.
I had the fortune of traveling with some of my coworkers to a farm in South Carolina where one of my coworkers had a friend who was living on this farm at the time, and he opened his home and his family reunion eclipse party that was happening to a group of us, some of them were friends, some of whom were strangers, and we all just kind of converged there.
And why was that farm special, in terms of the eclipse?
It was South special Carolina? Because it was directly in the path of totality. So we went there, and it was truly just an incredible experience on many, many, many levels. Yeah. The person who hosted us there was incredible and has become a beloved person in my life.
Yeah.
And the family that was there, that it kind of became this weird temporal, we are all representing each other's family to each other experience.
Yeah.
And so I had brought a temporary altar setup for myself to the eclipse. And so I sat on the grass behind this beautiful red barn. And as the eclipse was starting, I set up this piece of cloth with a bunch of crystals, including some amethyst that my children had found in Lake Superior earlier in the month. And some of which I kept for myself, some of which I ended up giving to my best friend on her wedding day, a couple of months later. But then I also brought my tarot deck, and I brought the entire deck and had it on the altar throughout the entire eclipse. And then I also pulled cards at multiple points during the eclipse. So
great.
At the very beginning, right when the totality, right when the actual totality happened.
Yeah.
And then after the totality was over, so I pulled multiple cards. And so and when I say charged it up, I really mean literally it felt like not only was my deck being charged with the energy that was coming from the totality, but my body was literally being charged.
That's great.
Every time I would put on my eclipse glasses and look straight up at the sun, even with the eclipse glasses on, I couldn't actually be making contact with the sun for very long because I felt like this I can only describe it by making a noise. I felt this like like coming through my chest into the rest of my body. And so that energy that I was feeling in my body was going into my deck. And so it was kind of a strange situation to have it be working with a new tarot deck in. And there were points where I felt kind of like, why did I bring this deck that I don't know anything about with me to this experience? Like, I should have a deck that I know. But I'm glad that I did, because I actually feel a lot more trust with this deck now.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Well, and I love that. I wanted to slow that down because I think of, I travel with 3 decks, and one of the first things I do when I land anywhere is set up my travel altar. And the travel altar is basically these decks and a few items that really are meaningful for me that are also tied to the different elements of this planet, right? Yeah. Earth, fire, air, water, and often metal as well. And I think about, and it's like I lay down a cloth, I put my tarot deck down, I create the altar, and then I also will, when I go to an event that has an altar, I will often add my tarot deck to that altar. And I think of it as it's charging up with the best intentions, the good energy, like, the prayers that people are putting into it, and the longing, right? Like, I think so much of what a tarot or an altar is about is like, what is it we're longing for? Yeah. And then how are we generating collective longing and collective grounding, right? Of like, oh, it's not just us here. It's not just us alone on this planet, like wandering around with our brains trying to figure things out. There's this interconnectedness of all of us. And, it's so funny to be coming out of the Star Wars experience, but it's like, oh, that thing about the Force is such a beautiful way of understanding that, like, interconnected energy. Yes. But it's also like, oh, there's gods, there's goddesses, there's powers that be. And there's a way that we have to humble ourselves to those powers. And so I often think of it as like, oh, I'm going to put this on the altar, and humbling myself, because I'm like, I'm not, this tarot deck, even the wisdom that comes through it is not only for me, it's only about me. Yeah. It's how I'm tapping into some larger truths that are happening. So if I was advising someone, I'm like, and when I do guided people, they're like, how do I get started? I'm like, you need a tarot deck. And you need to let it charge up, and you need to recognize that every time you touch it, you're bringing a charge to it. You're bringing an energy to it. So on this, actually, like how tarot is structured, like kind of basic structures of tarot that feel important to share with people, is you kind of have the major arcana, and then you have 4 suites or suits. You call it suits. I'm like, suites. No, I'm like, that's a different room, honey. So, so you have the major arcana, which tend to be these large archetypal, big emotions or big feelings or big things like strength, death, lovers, the empress, it's like these sort of big core, either personalities or big core movements and moments in life. And then the
very
suits,
highly symbolic,
and I think of them as like very strong cards. Like often if I get that early in a reading, I'm like, okay, like this feels like it's centering or grounding the read, and I'm building around that. And then the 4 suits, which are lined up with the elements of the earth, and inside of each of those suits, it moves from the ace of the suit, which is the bottom of the suit, all the way up to whatever it's like through the numbers, and then it has 4 cards that are kind of like royalty cards, face cards, something like that. And depending on the deck and depending on their commitment to liberating theologies or whatever, some of them are straight up like, you're the jack or the queen, the king. But then there's other variations on that I really enjoy. That, visionary, architect, traveler are some of the ones that are in the deck I'm going to be using for today's read, the Slow Holler deck, which I love. How do you use it? Like, do you use it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, special reads? Like, kind of what's your actual practice at this point?
Well, so my practice at this point is that I tend to now go to my deck more on like a weekly or biweekly basis for a particular issue or particular relationship. I was for a long time in a daily practice of pulling a card in the morning and a card in the evening. And that was when I was working with my Wildwood Tarot. And with that same deck, I would also do really major spreads, like major spreads, like, like sort of spreads that were spreads in the shape of like a bow and arrow, and like pathway spreads, and like all these crazy spreads, that were, and I love doing that too.
Yeah. And where were you learning your spreads?
Well, I worked first with that book. with the book that came with the deck, it gave a lot of guidance around different spreads that were used for different types of decisions or challenges. And then I just started creating spreads in shapes that I liked.
I love that.
Or like I remember when I was in Croatia, like a couple of years ago, I met this amazing person and we like had this deep immediate connection. And so we decided to do like tarot readings for each other. And I did this like, 4 generations back spread for him where it was like,
Wow.
I did a card for ancestors, like 4 generations back, 3 generations back, 2 generations back, his parents, and then a card for him.
Wow.
And like, you know what I mean?
Awesome.
So I got with that deck, I got really wild around like what I would do with this once, because I got so intimate with it, you know? But so I've been really easing in with the Wild Unknown tarot.
Yes,
you know, so I often with the Wild Unknown, I'll do like, and this is the guidebook that comes with this deck has some really beautiful suggestions for what to ask and how to do readings. You know, like the card a day reading, the past, present, future reading, the clarity spread, which is actually one of my favorites because you pull one card. Like if you're in a situation where you're needing clarity, you pull one card that represents like the overall situation. And then the second, third, and fourth cards that you pull in no particular order basically represent other things that are kind of impacting or influencing, other factors influencing the situation.
Nice.
So one of the things I really like about like the multiplicity of spreads that are possible with tarot decks is that like you can kind of go anywhere you want. You can structure it for yourself, and it most of the tarot decks that I work with now really encourage you to be nonlinear.
Yeah.
With which is actually hard to do
Yep.
in a tarot deck because like the way the deck
Yep.
itself is quite, you know, it has
Yeah.
there's a linear functionality to particularly like the meaning of like the 2 through 10.
Exactly.
You know what I
You're
mean?
going on a journey.
You're going
and
on a
moving through
journey
the
like
heart.
5. If you pull a 5 of any suit, it
Anything.
means something.
Yeah.
And it means something particular to 5 regardless of
usually
what suit you're
everything
in.
is broken.
It's like, well, it's like everything's about to go crazy. You know? So
And by the time you reach 10, it's sort of like, oh, you're reaching some fulfilling, you know, abundant energy. You can,
Exactly.
Yeah.
What
Awesome.
about you? So you have your and this is actually a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while. That you have this daily movement tarot practice that you do, where you pull these cards and then you post them on Instagram and Facebook, and like tons of people are following them. I'm wondering if does that also serve as your daily practice, or do you
Yeah.
have another way that you're practicing that's more intimate and
Yeah.
that you're not sharing publicly?
Yeah. So I think when I was first pulling it, it was just like, you know, we need guidance. And I was pulling a card a day, and sometimes it would be just one card I would pull, and then I realized I was like, I don't want my life energy to be overly influencing what's happening for this movement pull. Like I actually want to learn to hold that distinction. So then I started to make sure that I pull for myself first, or that I'm clear and not seeking guidance, so that I can, you know, like because like some days I'm like, I really need to know this. Then I pull for myself first, and then I do the movement tarot. Other days I'll wake up and I'm like, I'm feeling very clear. Actually, it's often the days, if I wake up and I meditate, by the time I get to the tarot read, I'm usually like, okay, just what is the movement, you know, what does the movement read? And then I usually also will pull something for myself on a given day. And then I'm a big, like I really like to use it for past, present, future of a certain situation. I do a lot of relationship spreads, and I've started doing readings for other people. And kind of random. I mean, like people just will randomly reach out and be like, hey, could you do this for me real quick? You know, and like it's not, I haven't gotten to a place where I'm like, come to my house and I will do this often, you know. But I really, yes, with everything involved. But I do, I'm really inspired by the people who do that. And like anything else, I really think that there's practice and there's craft, and I want to hold the distinction between those. So for me, I started in 2012, so I'm 5 years in, almost 6 years in now to practicing, right? And it began as my own personal daily practice, and I wanted to make sure I was good at it before I was doing it for others. And then I think in 2015, was the first time I was like, okay, I'll do a 1 card draw first for other people, like at a party. And then I started moving to like, I can do a 3 card draw. And I trust my deck and I trust the tarot, and realizing like, it's not about whether I trust myself. It's like, I just have to get myself out of the way and the tarot will do its work. So that's been exciting. So those are the main ways that I use it right now. The thing that I've gotten away from, for a while I was like obsessively doing relationship spreads, like with every dynamic in my life. Like I'd be like, that person was just disrespectful to me a little bit, let me just pull 4 cards and see what exactly, well, that's what I thought was going to happen. So I started to pull back a little bit from that, because I think, just
you
like
can overpull a deck.
You can overpull a deck, exactly. And I was like, I'm almost like, I just want to be really clear. I was not being clear in my questions. I was just like, tell me, read this person. So I think that there's a way that I started to pull back from that to be like, to be like, hey, what is it? What do I really need to go to this what is this medicine actually for?
Yes.
And doing the movement tarot, resistance tarot, has evolved also. So when I first started, it was just 1 card every day. And I would think about what had happened the day before. I would think a lot about what is the news that we're dealing with right now, or up against right now, and how are we going to get through this news. So I would look at what's happening in the world. And there were certain days where it's like, oh, this massive shooting just happened, or this Muslim ban just dropped, or the trans, it's like different pieces of news that I was like, this is overwhelming for us. We actually don't have a clear way to respond to this and to move, to move clearly towards like, here's our powerful response that is centered in what we're moving towards and longing for. So to me, using the tarot in those moments has been a way to say, we're not on our own, but we do need to face this stuff. And sometimes the tarot will keep it real in a way that I might not during that day. Like I might be like, let's keep our heads up. And the tarot's like, you need to drop your ego. Yeah. Or this is a time to grieve and to wallow and to feel that sorrow, or something else. And so that has felt important. And then I've started doing, on Saturdays, I do the Saturday spread. That's like, what was the past week all about? What's this weekend for? And then what is next week about? And then on Sundays...
What's a weekend?
What's a weekend anyway? But I really think that like making the distinction of like, time is passing and there's what's already behind us that we can't do anything about. There's this time which we can use to restore, regenerate, really turn and pivot, and then there's something coming, right? We can't get too stuck in what just happened. We need to figure out how do we take the lessons from it and how do we keep it moving forward, because that's the pace at which our whole world is moving right now. And then on Sundays, I've been doing a relationship spread between the movement and something. So I've done like movement and, well, my favorite one was actually movement and like funding, right? And being like, how do we do this? But also I've done one on, movement and exhaustion. I just did one on movement and exhaustion, and like, how do we orient in our relationship towards our massive exhaustion? So different things like that.
Yeah. So one thing this lifted up for me that I think something we should just talk about really quickly before we do our readings is the relationship between tarot and prediction. Because I think that's another one of the things that either people are turning to the tarot for, or are resistant to tarot because they think that that's something that it does.
Or that they're going to find out something they don't want to know.
Oh, God.
I hear a lot of that.
When they pull the, like, hanging man or whatever.
Yes.
Or hanged man. I was just like, hangman. No, that's the game.
You got it, girl. You got it.
But I think, so one of the things that I just want to say about this that I think is important for folks when they're orienting to tarot decks, is that like all things are happening at all times. So it's not like the tarot deck is like, this is happening. The tarot deck is more going to point to, here's what you need to pay attention to.
Exactly.
In the everything that's happening, because all possible universes actually do exist in and all things are actually possible at any given moment. But here's the either future or potential future that you need to pay attention to. Here's what's happening in the present moment that you need to pay attention to, or here's the piece of your past that you need to be working with in order to navigate what's happening. Yep. So it's really not about actually predicting the future. And I think that that's, and the way in which that can be so wise and true with a deck, actually loops back to something I wanted to share about my experience doing readings for people, which is a little bit different than yours in that I started actually doing readings for people right away for my deck because it helped me learn my deck.
Oh, that's great.
But one of the things that I would do it only with like people that I felt close enough to, and I could be really like forthright with like, I just got this. We're learning this together. And what
Let me learn on you.
What I would often do though is tell them that like, you don't have to tell me what your question is.
Yes.
You can just hold your question and we'll sit together and I'll shuffle the deck and I'll pull cards for you and then I can read the descriptions to you. I can tell you what I think about this, but I don't need to know what your question is in order for you to get something out of this.
That's great.
And those were some of my best experiences doing readings for people, was where I didn't know what it was that they were actually struggling with.
Oh, that's great.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I have to say, that's actually interesting too, because my instinct in tarot reading has often been the opposite of me holding, right? I'm like, I'll say the same thing. I'm like, I don't need to know your question. I don't need to know. That's your private thing. But I will often I'll shuffle the deck and then I'll hand it to them and be like, okay, you cut it up. Now you shuffle it, put your touch on it, and you pull it with your left hand. And a lot of it has just been intuitive for me. I'm just like, oh, this is how it works for me. Right. This is what makes it possible for me to do it and keep the boundaries I need to keep spiritually.
Yes.
But I love that because I do feel like so many people I've met who do the most powerful readings have really developed so intuitively with this practice.
Yes. Right.
So speaking of, should we do a reading for each other?
Let's do some readings. So
yay.
Adrian and I thought what we would do.
Okay.
We're orienting our listeners again. We thought what we would do.
You're so helpful.
Is that we would each do a reading for each other from the decks that we're currently using.
Okay.
And then we're going to, in the Resistance Tarot tradition, we'll somehow figure out a way to use Adrian's deck together. Maybe we can do something where I shuffle and you pull or something with the other deck.
Well, with this deck,
yeah. Well, and then we can.
I have an idea.
You have an idea,
but we can do it when we get there.
So, do you want me to go first?
Read for me.
For you. So what we thought we would do is do just a single card that we pull for each other for the coming year. Can you hold my microphone?
I got you.
Okay. I'm gonna shuffle, and so this will be nice. You guys can hear me. You guys.
Oh no.
Our listeners.
You people of all genders.
I put it right up to the microphone so you can hear me shuffle.
I hope that came through.
We also grew up playing cards. Really intensively. Adrian and I are both very serious spades players, and so one of the things that we had to learn growing up was how to shuffle a deck, and so
in a way that would not embarrass any of our family members.
Exactly, especially our Black family. So, so what's really funny is that I actually shuffle my deck the way I would if I were about to play a game of spades, even though that's not a traditional way to shuffle a tarot deck. But I just
That's who you are. You gotta be me.
Gotta be me.
As Audre Lorde says, I am who I am, doing what I came to do.
So
shuffling the tarot
I'm going
deck.
to hand this to you so you can cut it.
All right.
And then I'll shuffle a little bit more. And that's the sound of Adrian cutting. Yeah, she did it. I'm going to hand you my microphone again. I'm going to shuffle a little bit more. And then I'm going to pull a card for you. Here we go. Adrian Marie Brown. 2018. What's it going to be? Okay.
Yay!
Yes!
I love that.
I love that I just pulled this card for you because I also just pulled this card for a beloved person in my life, and
I am the beloved person.
You are the beloved person, and there's this other beloved person in my life for whom I pulled this card.
Oh.
And I also have been pulling this card repeatedly for myself. What? So this is one of those cards for me that comes up again and again. So this card is one of the major arcana of the Wild Unknown Tarot deck. It is called Strength. It is card number 11 of the major arcana, and I'm just going to read to you from the book what this card says about itself. You can hear Adrian's taking a picture.
So, can I describe it while you do that? It's just a gorgeous lion, a gorgeous lion with an infinity symbol on her forehead, and the sun shooting out above her head, and a rose in her mouth, and I just have been
directly out.
She's staring directly at you, and I've just been feeling so much lion energy lately. So I'm just like, yes. Okay.
So can I read this card to you?
I'm so open heart.
So Strength, mastery of emotions.
Yes, God.
This is so good because it's so related to everything we've been talking about. Okay. It's common to think of this card as the roaring, devouring side of the lion. But look again. The strength this card suggests is a much deeper force that's found within. The lion represents our most patient, composed self. They are a master of focus, compassion, and self-control. When this card comes up, you're in need of harnessing this power for yourself, girl.
Hey!
All the courage you need can be found in the muscle known as the heart.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what this card means to you right now. I don't even need to interpret this card for you.
No,
I can see
you actually
your body.
know
you
my whole body is just like, yes. Well, so much of what this coming year is about, what I'm articulating and declaring into the universe, is really grounding into home and letting home resource my body, letting home resource the work I have to offer. When I say home, meaning Detroit, and also meaning the home of my actual body. And I feel like I've been on the run for years now.
Like Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Just like Beyonce and Jay-Z. And who also, she's a Virgo with a Scorpio moon, and she's also been on the move, right? And it's been a time of being on the move for me, to move my work, to move my relationships. Everything has been out away. And now it's like, I want the strength of having Detroit under my feet, and I want the strength of having my body be well. And and I feel like there's a lot of courageous moves that I need to be able to make as a facilitator in movement for this next year. Things that I'm like, I keep thinking some other, leader or facilitator or someone else is going to be able to scoop all this mess together and figure it out. And I'm like, oh no, I have to be willing to step into that.
Gorgeous mess.
Beautiful, gorgeous. I mean, I do think it's a beautiful, gorgeous mess, right? And I actually am looking around at people who are slightly older, slightly younger than me, and being like, there's actually, it's us. It's like there's a group of folks who I'm like, we are paying attention and we want this to feel differently.
Yeah.
So for me, this feels like, what a gift that actually the courage to do that is rooted in my heart and rooted in continuing to move from what I love towards what I love. Yes. And there's so many distractions that can come up, but that idea of I'm focusing on love, and that's what's going to give me the strength to guide, move, and heal and home. I keep using home as a verb, but I want to home this year.
Home is a verb.
Home is a verb. It's really working for me.
Yes.
High fives.
High fives.
Thank you. That is
You're
a blessing
welcome.
of a creed.
Oh my God. I love that I just pulled this card for you.
I know. I feel really moved by that.
But, and I feel like this is just one of those moments to just highlight. This is exactly what the tarot does, right? That
Exactly.
it keeps, there's a reason also that this card keeps emerging for me and keeps emerging for other people in my life, right? That this is calling something. This is calling to us.
Exactly.
We are being called. We are all being called to master ourselves.
I love that. Ooh. Is you my master now? Yes,
I am for myself.
So,
do you want me to hold
it's your turn.
microphone while you shuffle?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
So I
Talk me
tend to
through
do
it.
it like this.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's
So
sweet.
I'm
like
doing
that.
not a full shuffle, but just sort of like a scooping
Scoop,
motion.
scoop.
And
Scoop,
sometimes
scoop.
when I'm scooping, this happens, which
Where
a card,
a card
will
pops
jump
out.
And I'll often just hold on to it on the side. I was like, this is a card to tune into and pay attention to.
Okay, that was the three of branches
so the three
that
of branches
popped out.
just jumped out, and if we need it later, we'll come to it.
Okay.
But mostly it's a way. To me, I take it as the deck being like, pay attention.
Get
to
that
this,
out of the way.
And it's not the heart of things. Yes. All right. So then I'm going to put the deck here, and you're going to cut it. Okay. And you can cut it as many times as you want to, just like you would a spades deck where you thought someone might be cheating.
Okay. And then can I put it back together?
And then you put it back together until it's really your pile. And now you're going to spread it out.
Okay. I'm going to move the Zoom recorder over here onto the futon.
And the one request I have is that you use your left hand when you actually pull your card out.
Okay. Am I using
and you can be sitting holding your...
I'm using my right hand right now. Okay.
You're using your right hand now. That's... I can't believe you just asked that.
Oh
That's
my
great.
God, no, this is an actual
it's
thing.
wonderful.
I'm one of those people who has to lift up the hands to do the
L. I am too, but I just think I still think I'm so alone in that.
Yeah, no, you're not alone.
Maybe our parents didn't teach us something we need to know. All right.
Okay.
So, and again, it's 2018, right? This is for the year. Oh. Awesome. So Autumn has pulled the fledgling. And the fledgling is the very first card in the deck, the Fool.
Yes, it's the Fool.
Yes, it's the Fool. And in this deck, it's a little creature in red walking through what appears to be an entire starry night in nature with just their little flashlight guiding the way.
And it's okay. So can I describe a little bit about this?
Absolutely.
So what's fascinating about this card, and I've never, so the Slow Holler deck is also the deck that I have the biggest crush on.
Oh, I didn't say that. So
Yeah.
I'm using the Slow Holler deck.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I'm in love with this
I think it is
deck.
such an amazing deck. It's by a group of queer Southern artists and writers, and many of whom I keep finding out that I know, and I'm like, "What? You did this? I love it so much."
That's so good.
And it's gorgeous.
So this person is walking across like this grassy space that also appears to be floating among the stars, is holding a flashlight, is walking in these like amazing high tops where the laces are totally undone and are like flying away behind them.
Yes.
They have a red backpack on, and something is like tied to the top of the backpack. It looks like it might be a roll of papers. And what's amazing about the image, I don't know how the artist pulled this off, but the fledgling appears to be facing both toward the person who's looking at the card. Like their body appears to both be facing away and toward you.
Yes.
At the same time.
It's incredible. It
It's
somehow
really
looks
incredible.
Like they have the roll on their backs and their fronts, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, can I read you a little bit about what this card
Please
says?
read it to me.
Trust your adventurous self. Start over. Remember your innocence. Mock and play. Be spontaneous. Risk looking foolish. Trust your path. Take a plunge. Leap before you look. And there's a longer description. I'm just going to read you a sentence of it. When you work with the fledgling, you're able to embrace the impulsive freedom of doing the unexpected and bucking social norms while reconnecting with your innate innocence and ability to trust. Your resources are boundless. The fledgling appreciates the newness of the journey more than the destination. Even when the path is dark, the fledgling trusts that they have just enough light to guide their adventures. Whatever happens next will be part of a new story.
Oh my God.
Right? So can you tell me a little bit about what this feels like it means for you for your 2018?
So what's so intense about this card is that, so as you know, I just had completed this pretty intense experience of like finishing a first draft of my manuscript of my novel. Masterpiece. That I've been working on since 2010. So it was like it's been a 7-year long process to get to this point.
Sacred number.
It is a sacred number. And so the manuscript is at a point where I'm about to send it out to a small cohort of people who are my readers. And then I'm going to... I'm actually not sending it to you.
I just raised my hand
I
and she
know.
rejected
I'm
me, as she does
sorry.
every time I tell her I want to read it.
And no one else in the family is either, including like Genjo's. I'm also not letting him read it first.
We're not the same person.
I know you're not the same person.
Anyway.
As my partner, but
I'm just literally an overeager fan. at this
you
point,
are, and I
so
love, and I want you to read it.
I wouldn't be able to probably give good feedback.
I want you to read it, and I need the feedback to come from people who are like not like so
Salivating?
like yes,
Yeah.
or who are just like not like so like blinded by their love for me. So, and
That did work as a.
yes,
I feel pacified.
You feel pacified, but so I finished this. I'm about to be, trying to put this work out into the world, and it does feel like I'm about to step off into this total like void of the unknown of like I'm going to be a fiction writer now? Question mark. Who
In
has
public.
in public, and I think I mentioned to you that I went through this incredible spiritual practice weekend with Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams in October, who is just dynamite and incredible. We should maybe try to have her on the show.
I think we could do that.
I think we could do that because she loves us. And I felt something really come unhinged in me during that weekend, not in a bad way, but really in like I feel something fundamentally changing in me in terms of like who I'm going to be in the world, who I'm going to be in the work that I do. And it's been a little bit frightening to be like, I don't know what this means. But it's helpful to look at this card and remember, like, I started working as a facilitator in 2006, 2007. And I basically just stepped out there and was like, I do this.
Yes, you
This
did.
is what I do.
Yes.
Like, I just created a facilitation practice because I knew I was gifted at it. And I was like, this is what I have to offer. And I just built it from the ground up, right?
Yep.
That, like, the ability to do it, I just built it for myself over time. And this is this moment for me, right? The fledgling moment of saying, it's time for me to step off the cliff and be like, I do this now.
Yes. Exactly.
And I don't know what the this is yet.
Yeah.
It may be like, now I write science fiction, or it may be something else. Like, there's something else that's coming for me, and I can feel it. And so I totally feel like this person who's looking both backwards and forwards.
Well, and I love the Fool, the fledgling, like the cycle of the major arcana, because it feels like you do start always, the Fool is always the beginning. There's so much wisdom in the Fool, and so much pure joy, pure love, pure curiosity, like pure moving towards life.
Right.
And you go through this entire journey, you end at the world, and then you cycle right back to the Fool. And so it really is a way of saying, oh, there's some completion also that you've experienced.
Yes.
And now you're ready for being a fool again, getting to be new again and have beginner's mind. And actually, to me, it's such a gift and such an indication. Oh, make sure I celebrated that because I completed something.
Yes.
I can celebrate that. And that celebratory energy will carry forward into this next endeavor.
And I really feel like, there's a thing that it's happening for me right now where, talk about like tarot and astrology and spiritual practice.
Yeah.
For Saturn just made this major move.
From being
in Sagittarius
to being in Capricorn.
for the last 3 years to being in Capricorn. And Sagittarius is my sun sign.
Indeed
and
it is.
almost all of the, like 7 of my planets are in Sagittarius.
Girl.
And it's in my house of like intimate partnerships. And so the last 3 years of my life have been incredibly serious years in which I've had to grow up so fast and be the most mature person that I could be in order to get through the things that I was being put through by the world.
Yeah.
And it's really, I have felt the shift really powerfully of that Saturn is all about structure. And I feel the structure just sort of like a scaffold I get to like knock off now and be like, all right, I got built up.
Yep.
And now I'm functional.
Yes.
And now let me see what I can go do with this new functional body that got built up.
Yes, exactly.
I know.
And then it's a spiritual body. Then
it's a spiritual body. It's a wisdom body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Fantastic.
Fucking amazing.
Fantastic. I'm going to take a picture of it. That's also part of my practice when I read for people is I make a little, like basically a Google Doc of pictures of here's all the cards I pulled for you and here's what they mean.
Oh, I like that.
So why don't you shuffle?
And at some point, we'll have to go back to the 3 of branches. I just want to look in the book and see what
what's so
all
exciting is I know that there are people like tarot readers out there who are just sitting there like, I know what it means.
Everyone, like people listening to this, are like, I don't know what the 3 of branches.
Girl, you need to check that 3 of branches out. No, we'll get to it. But okay,
start shuffling?
You should start shuffling. And I just want to tell folks the next deck that we're going to use for the movement tarot deck, the movement read, is called the Shrine of the Black Medusa. And I love this deck. It's created by an artist and a poet and just creative soul named Casey Lynn Rocheteau, who is a Black human being living in Detroit and just humble and dope and cool. And it's collages, like these radically Black, gorgeous collages. And then I love that the descriptions are like 1-sentence descriptions that are just like, boom, here it is. So like one of my favorite cards in the entire deck is the Hermit card. And the description is like, you know how you don't hear from Beyonce until she's good and ready to come and snatch your edges? Get like that. Center that ass. Right? Like it's like that's the whole read. And that's what you need to know. That's the Hermit, right? So this is that deck, and Autumn has shuffled it. Okay. And now I'm going to spread it out. And for 2018, for our movements, for social justice and environmental justice, right relationship with each other and the planet, what do we need?
What do we need?
What do we need?
What do we need? Adrienne is hovering her hand over the deck.
Kind of feel like this. Ooh. Oh. All right. So we've pulled Eon.
Eon.
Which in this deck is the World card.
Fuck yes!
It's like everything. So
this
Eon
is the end of.
It's almost the end of the.
It's almost the end of the tarot.
It's like
journey.
the universe is next. Mm-hmm. This is the Eon card. It goes this: criticism is a gift. You must look at yourself and your past honestly, with forgiveness, entering into an era where you are the sun of your own solar system.
And this is for our movement.
Right?
Right?
This is for our movement. So immediately hit for me is I've been thinking of this as like 2018 needs to be the year where we really get into deep practice of transformative justice in a real way, of being able to say like we're going to critique each other. And we need to find ways of creating accountable movement space that's not about tearing each other down or canceling each other or kicking each other out, but instead really holding that like you get to be here. We all get to be here, but you have to be willing to say, hey, here's some of what's gone on in my past. Here's what I've learned from it. Here's what I know I'm not going to repeat. Here's the apologies that I owe, and I'm ready to do the work, right? And that the work cannot be just tearing each other down. Like that's actually not a job that we need to have filled in movement, right? There's no job description for it, and there's no paycheck for it, and there's a reason for that. It's like that's actually not a position we need filled.
Right.
But what we absolutely need filled is people who are willing to be like, I'm going to be honest. I'm not perfect, but I've been doing my work and I will continue doing my work to show up here. And this piece around forgiveness, not in the like, oh, just forgive and forget and just get past it, but really like, let's turn and look together at how we have let ourselves be in patriarchy, be in capitalism, be in toxic masculinity, be in transphobia. Let's look at how we have allowed this to be inside of our movements, and how do we generate forgiveness towards each other alongside of, in partnership with accountability.
Oh, I love that. So
yeah,
a couple things. One is this line, entering into an era where you are the sun of your own solar system. The call there for our movement to be willing to be the light that is shining on the rest of the world and saying, we know how to be life-giving.
Yes.
And we will be life-giving.
Yeah.
And not only will we be life-giving, but we will last forever.
Yes.
Like that is a very powerful call for like, how do we move out of like a movement trajectory and a movement, like a historical understanding of movement that is really rooted in everything we've lost and how much has been disappeared, into like everything, how much we have won and how we continue to win, and how we continue to burn, and how we continue to give life, and how we continue to like exist against everything else.
All the
right?
odds, right?
So that's really beautiful and powerful. It's like, what if we just reframed our whole understanding of what it means to be a social movement?
And I jumped to say it was the world. It's more the awakening card. It's like what awakening,
yes.
which is also like, oh, humble yourselves, everyone who thinks you're already woke. Like we are all awakening.
Which makes sense because like the image on this card is also really incredible. There's like the top of the card is a pyramid, but like what's the word I'm looking for? Like I visited this place, Chichen Itza style pyramid, right? Like Yucatan Peninsula style pyramid, not like a Egyptian style pyramid.
Yeah.
So it's a pyramid, but it's a pyramid that's like rising out of a face that's breaking in half.
Yeah.
So the face is like coming apart as though it was like built to open.
Yes.
And then out of that opening is rising this like pyramid. And so there's this interesting thing that's like, definitely there's like that indication of like the wisdom that is needed is already inside you. You just have to be willing to like open yourself, but also like separate from self in order to access it. And then, but look, the wisdom still requires us to fucking climb.
Exactly. Exactly. Like you ain't there yet.
You know what I mean?
You need to grow. And you know, something, this piece around you are the sun of your own solar system. There's something else in here that I want to pull up, which I think maybe it's an Aesop fable, but there's this old story about how the sun and the wind had a fight, and they were fighting over, there was like this little boy walking, and they were trying to say who was more powerful. And they decided that whoever could get the boy, he had a coat on, right? They were like, whoever can get the boy to remove his coat is the more powerful. And the wind blew and blew and blew and blew. And the boy just pulled his coat tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. But the sun just shone and was itself. And eventually the boy got so warm that he pulled that coat off. And I love this also as a fable for our movements right now. It's like, we've got some blustery shit going down with the entire world, both literally like hurricanes moving through this planet, but also like but also like on a political level, there's so much just hot air and bullshit and wind blowing and trying to convince people of things that are just patently not true and not going to allow us to have a future. And instead of joining in that wind and adding to all that mess, how do we be the sun? How do we be a deep light, a warmth, a home, like something, you know? How do we be that way in ourselves? And I just love this.
A place of returning.
A place of returning, a place of comfort, a place of like, I don't need to be guarded and shielded. I don't need to be hidden. I can be my whole self.
Yes.
Right? So that's very exciting.
That was such a good...
movement.
2018 is going to be so
movement.
good for our movement.
And I'll take a picture of this one too. We can put all these maybe up on our website with this episode.
Oh yeah, did you get a picture of the strength card?
I did. And maybe I'll take some more, but wow, this was so fun to do with you, Autumn. I really enjoyed it.
For this reading that you did for me.
Thank you for
letting me do a reading for you.
It's such an intimate, honoring thing too, to share readings, especially amongst friends and loved ones and beloveds. Yeah.
All the different types of people that we love.
Exactly. There's so many.
There's so many ways to
love
people.
All.
Thanks for listening to our show. We are on Twitter and Instagram at End of the World PC. We're also on Facebook at End of the World Show.
You can also make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/End of the World Show.
It is really true that another thing that's really helpful that you can do to help us sustain the show is to write a review on Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone person. Thank you for doing that.
And How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the incomparable and beloved Zach Rosen.
Music for today's show comes from Tunde Olaniran and Blue Dot Sessions.